Good morning, everybody. Just got out the gym. Had a few emails come through while I was training in there. I thought, Christ, on one of those days. We've got going for planning permission on 2 retail units, offices, an ex-restaurant, in joining buildings next to each other in Kidderminster, a local town. And we've had all of the responses from the relevant agencies now, flooding and health impact and all that type of stuff. And I mean, we've been through this loads of times, but it never fails to amaze me how nonsensical a lot of the stuff that gets thrown in the way of doing a good quality development. I mean, we've done countless of these type of buildings now all around the West Midlands and elsewhere, and the level of bureaucracy just seems to be getting worse. As the government, you know, they talk about ending the so-called housing crisis, but when it actually comes to planning, it's a pain in the backside and you can't get anything through quick enough. It's like, you know, we raise money to do these deals. We use bridging finance as well. And these things have time limits on them, you know. We generally will borrow money for 12 months to 18 months on a bridging loan, and then we have to refinance it onto a development loan or whatever we do. And the amount of time that these guys take to make a simple decision in hindsight. I don't know if you've watched football, but you know VAR, this new technology, it's not new anymore, but this technology, it takes them like 3 or 4 minutes to make a simple decision that should have been made within 10 seconds. It's like very similar to that. But what we've had this morning is apparently we hired a flood consultant, if you like, that, for the lack of a better term. And he prepared a nice report for us because it's in a town with a river running through it. And it uses, apparently, according to him, the latest technology and all this stuff. And his report was many pages long. And they've come back, this agency, they've come back and said it's not basically they haven't answered the questions and they haven't used the right technology. Now, I know that that's nonsense. And I'd assume that they've also simply sat there, haven't read the report and just gone, yeah, we'll just create a problem. I genuinely do think that certain agencies that work with local authorities who actually act like that, just to purposely create an issue. So yeah, we've got to overcome all that. That's one of the emails that have come through this morning. I tend to avoid them until I set a certain area in my calendar to make sure that I just prepare myself for all the BS that comes through. And listen, I'm a capitalist, right? In my opinion, the purest sense of the word. I don't believe in bureaucracy at all. To be honest, I think we should have a much cleaner, purer free market than we actually do, because it's not free. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read Ayn Rand or Friedman or Milton Friedman. Those guys, I mean, I read their work and I'm just like, yeah, this sounds like heaven to me as an entrepreneur, as a capitalist. I appreciate, you know, that probably is never going to happen, but we can dream. And the way these bureaucratic entities act, it's infuriating. But anyway, we be positive, we move on. And yeah, I've got this afternoon, I've got a talk at a local estate agent, because I need to, the owner of the company has asked me to come in and talk about a couple of different things. I've got a couple of rent-to-buys listed with them at the moment. And I know that those guys, as good of estate agents as they might be, they don't and can't handle the phones well in a rent-to-buy type context. I think I mentioned yesterday, when I released the video yesterday, that I was going to talk a bit about rent-to-buy, which is basically a hybrid between a renter and a property purchaser. So if you look at many of the issues that first-time buyers have, is they haven't got a big enough deposit, the credit isn't good enough. They're the main two, right? Well, a rent to buy overcomes those hurdles, so you don't need a big deposit, you don't need 10-15% down. In fact, you only need, generally speaking, around 3% to put down on average. And you don't need squeaky clean credit either. You can. It's up to me as the owner of the property who's doing the rent to buy with the prospective tenant buyer. It's up to me to make that decision, not the bank. And then that gives them 2 or 3 years to be able to clean up the credit, get a mortgage, and pay me for the house. So it helps me because I'll make a profit, I'll make a nice rental income in the meantime, and with those guys, it gets their foot on the housing ladder. See, things like this that happen all over the world, particularly where finance isn't as readily available as it is here. Like, we've got one of the most forward-thinking mortgage and finance industries, whereas Eastern Europe, for example, they haven't got all these fancy stuff that we've got going on here. So they can't just go and say, yeah, I want to get a mortgage, 5% down, fixed rate for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. They don't have all that. So they need to be more creative in how they buy and sell property, whereas we don't generally do it here for good reason. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying that this is the be all and end all at all, but it's just another way of doing things. So the rent to buy, I need to educate the estate agents on that and how to handle the objections that come through, because they're always the same. What happens if this happens, what happens if that happens. So you just need to be able to know how to handle them and how to pitch it to them. So I'm going to do that this afternoon. I'm on my way up to the office now just to prepare for that, but I'm going to video that meeting 20 minutes before I go to this agent's meeting, so I'm going to just do a quick poddy, 5-6 minutes of podcasting. Upload it to Podbean. Welcome back to the podcast, people. This is the first one I've done in a week or so. Got a spare 5-6 minutes, so I thought I'd share my thoughts, my insights on the inevitable obsession. That's what I want to talk about here. Being obsessed with your craft, your art. It doesn't need to be what we perceive as art in the world. As in drawing, music necessarily. Anything can be artistic. It's the way you see the world. Ask yourself a couple of questions. What do you surround yourself with all the time, unconsciously? What books do you first go to on Amazon? If you didn't have to work for money, what would you be doing? I can honestly say that I'll be doing exactly the same thing right here, right now. Creating content, buying and selling property, building a £1 billion property investment company. That's what I want to be doing right now. I can't have any other way right now. Now, in 10 years, that could be completely different. Nobody knows. And we might be dancing to a different tune. But whatever life asks of you right now, it's a damn good idea to let that happen, to work with it, to flow with it. Done. Got a podcast episode along with a YouTube one. Look at you. The biggest problems for rent, most people don't want to rent, they want to own. Right? But the reason that they can't get the foot on the ladder is very often deposits, bad credit. I mean, you tell me, what do you must get them here. What type of people, what type of renters would like to buy? What's the reason for not being able to buy? Income,
certainly, possibly not having a deposit.
I think deposit's the biggest.
Deposit's the biggest one.
Deposit's the biggest thing, and especially with rents as high as they are now. When someone's paying £900 for a 3-bedroom house to rent, and everything else, all the household bills, utilities, food bills, everything else has gone so high.
Yeah.
How do they then, aside from all that, find another 20-30 grand to put aside?
And also the mortgage rate is just horrendous, because when I'm thinking, okay, it's lovely to have a 2-bedroom house, but I'm not willing to pay £1,200 a month.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
But even then, mortgage rate Even mortgage payments are still probably lower than rent now. Even now.
Now it is, yeah. That it didn't used to be the case.
Coming down.
Yeah. So the deposit, if we could create a hybrid whereby the deposit gets built during a rental period and it's locked in from day one to, let's say, month 36, which is a 3-year term. So as an example, so if we go back to that point now, if the average person is only renting and not buying because they haven't got the deposit monies, or they haven't got the credit availability to be able to buy something, is there something we can put in place to make sure that they can build a deposit and they can repair their credit, so that when the banks are happy to lend them the money, they can then buy a property?
That would be rent to buy.
And that's exactly, essentially, the principle. So if you went to a car garage now to buy a car, and you haven't got 30, 40 grand to buy the car, which is what's that, like a mid-range car nowadays, isn't it? A Kia or something, 30 grand.
Yeah.
If you went there and they said to you, well, give me 3 grand now, give me 500 quid for 3 years, and then whatever's left, you either give the car back, or you trade it for another car, or you buy the car. That's generally speaking what happens, right? It works exactly the same way. So if people haven't got 200 grand, for example, in cash to be able to give the owner of the property, but they can give them 5 grand today, they can give them market rent, let's say it's £1,000, market rent is £1,000, and then they can top it up, let's say 200 quid every month. So they'd pay £1,000 in rent, 200 quid on top, and that 200 quid can come off the price, or it can build in an escrow with your like escrow accounts or whatever, as a third party manager to then build the deposit monies. So in 3 years, let's say, 36 months time, they then go to the bank, say, I've built up, you've given them 5 already, you've already had that, they've built up 200 quid over 36 months, which is 7,200. So they've built up a £12,000 deposit there. And in reality, people don't save, it's like a full savings account. Whereas if you put that in an agreement, they'll do it naturally, just something in their head that just carries on. Whereas if you say to them, how much money have you saved over the last 3 years? No one saves anything, do they?
No, not automatically.
So this is why we need to flip it to the rental sector rather than the buying sector. Because people who are looking to buy houses are either in dream world, just looking and not doing anything, or they're actively got a mortgage ready to go. Otherwise they wouldn't be looking. Whereas on the rental sector, they don't even know. They don't know what they don't know. So if we can propose something to them on the rental side and say, no, actually there's a hybrid here where you don't have to just keep paying dead rent every month. I suppose the question is, why wouldn't they do that?
What would stop you from, or what's different about your rental agreement, for instance, and this agreement? Why would you not want to sign this one when you're potentially going to be ending up buying the property?
I suppose you just got to back.
I'm just doing devil's advocate.
You know, if the person then in that respect who's going to rent it is going to be the person that wants to buy it.
Yes, but you're buying it. You have an agreement to say that you can buy the property.
You don't have to. You can give it back if you want. You don't have to buy it.
No.
But you have to buy the property you live in it, or no?
No. So if this arrangement came up and you found a property that you liked and we could offer you a rent-to-buy scheme, so you rented it for a period of time, Alex is proposing maybe 3 years. You put a large chunk of money down up front, which you put towards your deposit, and you pay a small amount on top of your month every month until you get to the point where you can buy it.
I would probably accept that.
There you go.
So what would be your obstacles in your head? What questions would you be wary about?
Where's the guarantee on that?
Okay, so if
how you can prove me that in another 3 years I will actually have that money saved up somehow? And how do I use this money these days?
Because the
how
money's coming to us.
Towards the property? Was the charger being on the amount I already paid for?
So what would you need to see happen then? What would you need to see to satisfy that? Because I can't tell you, you need to tell me.
I would probably need to see that money visible.
Right.
Somewhere.
So if I could put it into Eric's account, not his personal account, into the company client account,
which is protected,
and you could see that every couple of months if you wanted to see it, would that be satisfactory?
I think it's got to be some paper.
Kind of, yeah.
There is not.
There's an agreement. Absolutely. And legally.
You see, the thing is, as far as you've got proper access to the stuff like this, and you don't have to go through the third party involved, that's okay. But if you would need to, let's say, carry on making a request to check what's there.
Well, for you, because you know us, you know that we're trustworthy. and the money that you pay would be in our client account, which is protected and insured, so that you could get access to that at any point. You've also got a legally binding agreement between you and the seller, which
isn't
tells
just
them
an AST.
no,
it's
a separate agreement.
Do it all properly. It's not just
not something we dreamed up.
Yeah, but what's the cost of the service like this? Because obviously it's not for free, is it?
Sorry.
It's not for free, is it?
Is what for free?
The cost of the service, the cost of being able to do this.
Yeah. What's the additional cost? Me as a
I like the question because
me as a customer paying for that.
You are the homeowner. You're going to become the homeowner, so there isn't any charge. Your charge is you're the tenant buyer. That is it.
You're basically going to be a buyer, and buyer doesn't pay anything apart from solicitors' fees.
You pay the solicitor's costs at the end.
At the end of the
At the end,
the years.
But that's the same if you're buying it now or later. So there aren't any hidden costs.
So the £5,000 say that's paid at the beginning, is that like similar to what we're doing with the advance, where you won't get that back?
Correct.
If you change your mind within the 3 years and something happened, that's
correct.
So that's
it's all non-refundable.
Yeah.
It's in the same
You're buying
way.
a house.
And the £200 every month as well.
As in the same way as if you go for a mortgage and you pay a mortgage for 3 years, you fall on hard times and you stop paying it. They don't give it you back, do they?
No, but you're not going. I'm presuming they're not going to have a mortgage in place for the first 3 years.
No, that's correct.
It's the same thing.
It's the principle.
It's the
The bank don't
principle.
give you the money
Do you
back
have
because you
to
stop
go
paying.
with a certain property?
It's whoever's willing to provide that opportunity to you.
Because the seller has to be
that's
flexible.
also the difficult case, because how do you know in a 3 or 2 years time you're not going to change your mind? How do you know the prices of the property is not going to change and you change your mind?
So
That's because you've already agreed the price at the start of the process.
You agreed today.
And you've signed it.
So if I say to you £100,000 today,
obviously,
and
it
in
was
3 years
right
it's worth
if the property
in
goes higher, but what if property goes cheaper?
that's the risk everybody takes all the time.
So if it goes higher, he loses because you've agreed it already. And if it goes lower, you lose. Because you've already
you get
agreed.
that with buying a property anyway. You could buy a property
That's true.
today, in 3
Yeah.
years down the
That's
line,
it.
the values could drop.
Yeah.
That's a risk you're always going to run.
Yeah. And you've also got to think about, I know you're thinking about it personally, but we're also thinking about it here today from a tenant buyer's perspective and how you can
I
explain
think
it
it's
to
a
them.
really good opportunity for people.
Well, it is.
You know,
It is.
to
That's
show
what we're trying
Educating
to.
the marketplace, which is
Yeah.
why
Why we're doing this.
it's a good idea to do this, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And because you get the same objections every time as well by
Yeah.
people. They all say, what if?
Yes.
Like,
What if the
there you
landlord
go. Perfect example.
and the property owners would actually accept a deal like this from the
Because of what Alex just
they
said.
part, not from the tenant part?
Right. Because maybe they can't get what they want for it at the moment.
And it turbocharges their rent
No,
income
I
as
mean,
well.
what's the reason for me, if I'm the landlord, to sell the house at the moment, let's say for the price which
So let's assume you.
someone's happy with it, knowing that the price is going to rise regardless?
Okay. So if you
asked
haven't sold
earlier
it,
if it was going to go down.
I'm hoping
So,
it's going
well,
to
there you go. So you don't know that. That's just risk.
that's the risk. So let's assume you're the seller and you haven't sold it. Here's an option for you. You could now say, actually, I've got somebody who's prepared to pay you 3% more than it's currently on the market for, but they won't buy it for 3 years. In the meantime, you're going to get market rent plus money towards the purchase, which if they don't carry on with it, you keep.
Yeah, but what's the reason of not selling the properties at the moment? Only
Price?
because the properties are overpriced, that's my point.
Right.
So you're not going to offer them carry on overpricing the property.
No, but we're overpricing because we're factoring in what the market might do in 3 years' time. So we're going up by 3% because it might grow by 3%.
Yeah.
It might not, but it might. And if this person, now you, becoming the tenant buyer, is prepared to pay that in 3 years' time, why wouldn't you accept it?
Why did the seller sell that one in Kimber?
Because he wanted to sell it before and it was too highly priced.
Right.
Case in point. He's
So
had it
he-
on with 2 other agents, couldn't sell it. So he came to us and said, can you rent it? Yes, no problem. We happened to then find somebody who wanted to buy it as well as rent it. And we turned him into a tenant buyer.
Do you get many sellers come through that I'm like, oh, if I don't sell it, I'll just rent it?
Yeah.
Right, there it is.
Yeah.
That's your ideal client.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, there's nobody else doing this locally. So that's our big potential win. If we can start doing this and offering it well and doing it properly, then we could potentially get a lot more business in that other agents aren't prepared to do or won't know how to do.
So, yeah, I don't know. Is there any questions you want to ask, Guy?
Anything else
I
you
think
need
a
to
lot
know?
of it is because if we want to put on the rental sector, you're probably going to get phone calls on it.
Well, that's why I wanted people to know. So if we put Brook Street on rental, it's going to be on this arrangement. So we're not just looking for a normal tenant, somebody that wants to rent it. We're looking for a tenant buyer. So if you want to rent it, it's not a property for them.
Yeah.
It's only available for somebody who wants to buy it but wants to go via the rental route to do so.
And the term, like we've been using 3 years as an example, is that negotiable?
It's flexible.
Yeah,
everything is.
yeah.
If they said 12 months, I prefer that. The lower, for me, the lower the better. For them, longer the better.
Of course.
Yeah.
So 3 years is usually a happy middle ground.
And in reality, what you're going to be doing is just fielding initial viewing requests and making sure that the right sort of people, and then potentially pass them on to Alex.
Yeah.
And Alex can have that conversation with them, negotiate with them, and make sure that the right sort of people.
Moment, to be fair.
That's fine.
What he doesn't want to do is get 16 calls from people who want just to rent it.
No,
because
which
that'll
you
waste his
probably
time.
will get.
Well,
Because
we'll
they don't
get.
read the
Yeah,
advertisement.
they
Yeah,
will.
we'll get them.
No.
Yeah, because they don't read.
And when the phone call comes in, it's like, this is for tenant buyers. No one knows what that is.
Yeah.
No.
So just don't say that.
Right.
You'd be better off going, this is for people who don't want to pay dead rent. Is that you?
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm going, what? And there's a curiosity. You don't have to say that. It's just sales pattern.
Right.
You get what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
If you say, this is for tenant buyers, not normal tenants,
That's not going to help anybody.
they don't understand what the hell anyone's talking about.
No.
But whereas if you say something that grabs them, hits the pain point, which is dead rent. This is for people who ain't got a big enough deposit to buy their own home. Is that you? It completely changes
That's a good
the
one.
concept of the conversation.
Yes.
So how does that work then?
Yeah.
And then you could go through everything we've just said, and it was frazzle the brain off. Better off not saying it.
Yes.
You're better off using something that they're used to, which would be, I use the car analogy, or anything on finance, television. You put £10 down and 20 quid, or whatever they do nowadays to buy the television.
Yes.
Something that they relate to.
Yes.
And that's what you use as the reference. So, which is that the same way as with a car? You put down payment, make payments, and then buy it in 3 years. Whereas is that the same way, but with a house? Is that something that would interest you?
Job done.
So ideally, we're just qualifying these people as best as we can to make sure they're in a position and know what they're going into before we send them over to you.
Because the two that have come through have been the buyers, but they've been property people, businessy people.
Oh, really? Right.
So because it's on, I think it's because it's on the sales.
It is. It'll be because it's beyond mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to take it off
System.
sales and put it onto rental.
Makes more sense. It needs to be on rentals.
Yeah,
It does,
To
yeah.
get
So
that
that
initial buy from somebody who wants to rent it.
that example is a good one about using a car because most people understand how a car finance works.
Most people do that, don't they? They don't buy cars cash.
No, you put a deposit down and then you pay monthly from then on towards it, and you get the option to buy it at a period of time. Okay, we can do that. Can't we?
What if I die? What if the landlord dies? That's a good one.
What do you
That's
do
what
then?
people say. What if the landlord dies?
Right.
What would you like to see happen?
All property goes with the name of the person who's actually signed it.
And they get it for free.
What was that? Sorry.
That's the best.
Is that Dom's law?
Yes.
What was that?
So if my landlord died, I'm taking anything what my landlord owns in,
Oh, you want to own it?
in his life.
Oh, I'm sure they'll sign everything.
What does
out
happen
to
if
you.
the landlord dies?
Whatever's in the paper,
Right.
which is usually goes to his next of kin, and that just has to
And then the agreement continues.
continues to
okay. Yes. But I guess you always answer the question with a question.
What do you want to see happen?
What do you want?
And then whatever
Yeah,
they say, just go, yeah, that's fine.
You're going to agree. Okay. Yeah.
Because you can't tell them anything. They
No.
have to tell you.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, they don't believe you, do they?
No,
It's
that's
a
true.
scam or something.
Yes. And it isn't.
So, what do you die? Well, if the landlord goes bankrupt, that's a fair one.
Yes.
Yeah.
In all fairness, what if the landlord goes bankrupt? What do you want to see happen? I want to make sure that the contract continues. Yeah, we'll make sure the lawyers sort that out.
Right.
It's done. Hurdle gone.
Yeah.
Die bankrupt.
All of the above.
All of the above. Anything with what if, you can
Yes.
say what do you want to see happen,
Yes.
and then they'll just tell you.
Okay.
What's the smallest amount you have to pay towards that? Because it could say it's £5,000, yeah?
This is what you do. You say how much you got to get started.
There's no smallest
No
amount
minimum.
of that.
No.
How much have you got to
Whatever
get
you agree.
started, and whatever they say, you go up to. Then they'll tell you another number. Then you go no more than, and they'll tell you another number, and that's the one.
No more than that.
Whatever the top one is. Usually 3 to 5 grand.
There's no set figures, it's just what
All
the landlord
negotiable.
wants.
If a house is an absolute mess and the landlord comes in here and can't sell it for what the price he wants for it, you can get a tenant buyer in there. They can do the work and take no down payment, and then the work is the down payment.
Yeah.
You can do that. Save 10 grand on a refurb. They can come in and do it what they want to do it as.
Makes a lot of difference, doesn't it?
She wants one, I think.
Yeah, I think
I
find a way.
She wants to rent a bark and tell. She's
you
going to
want
rent it out and HMO anything.
You can look after the HMO while you're there.
To grab some food with a mate, and also investor. We've just wrapped up a deal, so he's offered to take me out for some food, which is nice of him. again, these is, you know, they're all long-term relationships, all these investors that we work with. I did a deal with this guy who's a good friend now. I did a deal with him probably back in 2017. We bought an office block in Cradley Heath. We got planning and we sold that with planning. That was probably 5-6 years ago, and we're still good mates. And we have done a few bits and bobs since. I mean, this one is a lot smaller. That we don't need to go into the details, obviously, for privacy, but we've just completed the deal both ways, and now, yeah, hence the reason we're going for some food, just to sort of celebrate the deal and bring the new year in, really. Hopefully, we can do some more deals together this year as well. He's a good guy, he's a builder. It's good with your network to be able to use each other's skill sets and sort of refer each other to each other's networks, and that's what this guy does very well. Just been with a great lad, and it's reiterated how important it is to surround yourself with good, creative, quality people. You know, they don't necessarily need to, you know, be famous or all that type of stuff. Just real good people who are having a go and are quite, you know, the creative forces. Ended up speaking about, you know, some of the people who are highly influential on social media in a business sense, so Hormozy and Gary Vee and people like that, and how they draw attention. I was going to try and get on video some of the conversation. I completely forgot about it, to be honest. I was sort of engrossed in the conversation, so it didn't really come up, but it's just reiterated that need to surround yourself with people of a similar resonance. Just go out there and try and make it happen, and just evolve as life evolves around you, and go after it, because it's all too easy to just be beat up by the way of the world, the mediocrity and the average thinking. And I do believe, well, I know that birds of a feather do flock together, in the sense that if you're out there having a go, even if you're not where you want to be right now, if you're out there really, really having a go, you'll attract people doing the same stuff and people levels above you. If you actively go out of your way to find people levels above where you're at on any whatever craft you're mastering, you naturally gravitate towards that. So in closing, for the end of this video today, surround yourself with people further ahead than you in any aspect of life. Don't forget to sub.